Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Student Hub Live Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences Showcase, which is all about exploring the social and the global. My name's Karen Foley. I'm a lecturer here at the OU, and I recognise some familiar faces. Some of you may be new to Student Hub Live, so let me just explain very briefly how it all works. So this is a chat show. It's our space at the OU for showing and telling you things about our curriculum and many other areas like study skills workshops, etc. But today we're going to be focusing on some of the exciting new undergraduate and postgraduate curriculum from the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. And we've got a packed programme. Whether you're into economics or politics, there really is something here for everybody. So do stay tuned, drop in and out, and you can talk to the lovely Damon who's on our hot desk and Marie and Lizzie who are on our chat desk from the faculty also. They're going to be collating and answering your questions and bringing those to my guests today. So we've also got some widgets or interactive polls we'd like you to fill in throughout the sessions. That's to get your thoughts on ideas that we're going to be talking about. So you should be able to see a map that lets us know where you are in the country, how you're feeling, what you're studying, etc. Those are fairly self-explanatory, but some of the word clouds, which is where we ask for 3 words, they need 3 things, but you don't have to put 3 things in. A full stop or a dot would suffice, otherwise your results won't submit. And when you do use those tools, you'll be able to see what everybody else at home thinks also. So do join in. There's a little pin button on the chat if you'd like to pause anything and look for later. Very often we'll share links. You're very welcome to do so. But let me introduce you to Damon, who's going to be bringing your thoughts to our panel today. Damon, how are you? And what a lovely parrot, I must say, you have in the background there.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is my inflatable parrot. We had a birthday party a couple of weeks ago, and it was pirate themed, so everyone came dressed up, and this one sat on my shoulder all the way through. So
Aww. Yes, good, and it's here to stay. So tell me, Damon, how's everyone at home?
Okay, they're doing okay. I think everyone is warm. The sun is out. I think everyone's excited to get started. It's all looking good. It's looking busy in the chat box already. So yeah, I think everyone's raring to go.
Brilliant, and well done being indoors on such a lovely sunny day, although it's probably quite sensible to take a bit of a rest from the sun. We've got people in from Kent, Oxfordshire, Yorkshire, the Scottish borders, Leeds, and of course good old Milton Keynes. I'm in West Wales and it's lovely and sunny here today as well, and doesn't it make just such a difference? Well, let's move on because we have a really packed programme, and to start today's session I'm joined by the head of school, Chanel Bagwat. Now he works closely with the school management team consisting of 8 of the different schools disciplines in the area, and he's also involved in sustainable agriculture, food security, and many other subject areas as well. We've also got Matt Staples, who amongst other things is the director of teaching. He does a lot of curriculum development as well. If you've studied DD 102, U116 or DD 103, you might recognize his name. He is interested in politics of food, which I think will go down very well with everybody here today, and French foreign policy, which maybe not so much, but the food I think for sure is a good start. And Martin Higginson is an academic in the economics department and is working currently as the director of student support. So welcome. I wonder if we could start this session by focusing on one of the global challenges that the disciplines within the School of Social Sciences could collectively address. So Chanel, let me start with you.
Karen, I would pick food security as one of the challenges that SSGS disciplines could address. Food security is about having reliable, sufficient access to affordable and nutritious food. And a large majority of people in the world are food secure, but there is also a large number who are not food insecure. And that's really the major challenge in the world. It's a massively complex challenge because food is really the bottom line of everything that we do. As a challenge, it's not just about production of food, it's also about distribution, it's also about different practices around consumption of food. And so taken together, 8 disciplines within SSGS are very well equipped to address a challenge like food security.
Brilliant. Thank you, Shonal. That's wonderful. And Beverly, a popular Student Hub Live guest, has just finished U116. So that's really good to see you here today, Beverly. Food's a really interesting thing, Shonal, and thanks for bringing up those issues. It's something we've been talking about a lot. Martin, I wonder if, as an economist, you can sort of shed some light, because in addition to doing other things, you're very much into allotment gardening.
That is true, and I can actually show you a little prop here just to show I've been down to the allotment already today, which is my onions, which I think went down very well, or will go down very well later. So yeah, it certainly can. I mean, I think one of the things which Shonal touched upon was kind of inequality, and I think one of the striking things last week actually at the Cornwall summit of the G7 leaders was this difference between, on one hand, you had the G7 leaders having this gourmet dinner of locally sourced food, and yet just a kind of few miles down the road, you had a food bank which had about a 200% increase in use over the last kind of 12 months or so. And I think as social scientists, what we're really interested in is kind of trying to explain that. And some of that is definitely economics. I mean, part of it is income. Do we have sufficient income to actually buy the produce? Prices, not just the price of food, but also the price of alternative things that we have to consume, such as fuel. So do we do eating or heating, for example? And social factors, such as, within the household, there are kind of power dynamics. We often hear about the mother who might feed the children before their partner, social networks. I'm lucky with my allotment. I've got 10 minutes one way and I can kind of pick my own food, 10 minutes another way, and I've got a street full of cafes, shops which have healthy food. But many people don't even have that kind of physical environment. I mean, I think it's 1 in 8 people don't even have a garden, and don't have transport links. And in my hometown of Bristol, 1 in 20 people actually have suffered some sort of food insecurity. So there's a definite connection here between the local and the global as well. I mean, Shonal talks about consumption. What we consume can affect climate change, which can affect people 2,000 miles away, for example. And so it's a real issue both locally and globally.
And there are also so many issues around the food choices, because as you can say, you've got access to healthy and nutritious food, whereas some people may not have access to some of those things. It may not be desirable. There's so many things that can underpin just the basic choices that may be seemingly available that are much more complex in reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also compounded by marketing of food, social images of food, that just, they're kind of not so much the human capital, but the way we actually are brought up in families, our cultural norms, our social norms kind of shape those choices as well. So it's not as straightforward as just saying someone has income or someone has shops down the road. Absolutely, yeah.
So, Matt, what might politics then have to offer in terms of some of these current global challenges? And I see you've brought a prop along as well.
I've got a great British bangers, which are very topical at the moment. Many people have read about the sausage wars between Britain and the European Union. But to be serious for a moment, obviously what's happening in Northern Ireland, there's been an impact on food and what can go between Great Britain and Northern Ireland because of the border, because of the Northern Ireland Protocol. It seems facile to jizz in, but actually when you talk about security, we're talking about security of identity. People feel identities under threat because of trade being different between Northern Ireland and Britain. But then going further, you think about the way that actually access to food's securitized during lockdown. And also at the start of Brexit, when we didn't have certain things coming into the country because of the dislocation of customs regulations with new regimes of governance around import and export. And then with COVID, there have been limits on when we can go and access food, when we can, what shops are open. Different populations, older people or people who work for the NHS or for the police are allowed to go in at certain times, other people at other times. And so access to food was kind of politicized. Going further, as we've kind of distanced ourselves from Europe, you're seeing food almost as foreign policy. So we've just organised and signed, or about to sign, a treaty with Australia to have a free trade treaty with them, 0 tariffs on foods. They were very keen to sign that. as because we've removed ourselves from Europe to an extent, but they, because of their very critical stance on the Uyghur minority in China, which was their biggest market, has actually put sanctions on thousands of Australian products, and so their biggest market has hit overnight. And so you've got the juxtaposition of food. Thousands of Australian farmers now have their livelihoods at threat, juxtaposed with foreign policy. So you've got new relationships being built up between Australia and Britain, all to do with food, but actually to lots of other things: economics, crime, foreign policy, entities. And so the simple sausage is a metaphor for actually lots of interrelated questions that link our individual lives with actually global issues. You wouldn't think about, when you get some sausages, you're actually linking it with much bigger kind of questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's throwing up lots and lots of things that on the surface level seem very simple, but are much more complex. So we asked everyone at home what they'd had for lunch. We've had a lot of mixtures, but again, just these simple sorts of questions throw up a lot of things. Here's what you've been eating today for your lunch. We can see some things that are quite, specific to particular, perhaps areas, like sourdough bread is perhaps associated with certain areas. Some people having particular healthy foods, some not so healthy foods, etc. But lots going on there. So Shona, we can see now that food is a really essential commodity, takes on different sorts of meanings in an increasingly globalized world. I wonder if you might just sum up this section for us.
Absolutely. I think food is an essential commodity that has become very mobile in a globalized world. So in old days, you would imagine a smallholder farmer growing food and consuming in their household and possibly the village. But food today is increasingly globalized, and it's transported hundreds of miles across the world. And so that mobility does not necessarily mean easy access to food for everyone. Food is distributed unequally. And that is why some people in the world are food insecure, sometimes acutely food insecure. So as Matt and Martin have suggested, economics and politics as disciplines have a lot to contribute to understanding that mobility of food. And there are other disciplines in SSGS that collectively can actually are actually very well equipped to tackle a complex global challenge like this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chanel. Okay, so we've seen that there are lots and lots of issues. We asked you at home, what are some of the key challenges that affect us in terms of global challenges and food security? These are some of the things that you mentioned. Key on people's minds are things like climate change and environment, but there are also other aspects that we've talked about here, like inequality, transportation, and economic strengths. So lots and lots of things here being picked up by our audience at home. Thank you for that. So Matt, we've had a lot of growth in new curriculum in the school. In fact, that's all we're talking about today for the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. So why now? Why is there so much increased production of materials for our students?
Yeah, no, indeed. I think that kind of collage you just showed was actually a really good example of many of the issues we're currently engaged with. As a school, we look at lots of global challenges facing the world today, and the UK's place in that changing world. We draw together lots of rich historical and contemporary insights, and hopefully we're providing some of the answers, or at least we're engaging critically with some of those big questions that the students today have actually mentioned. Issues around identity, around climate change, around who we are, around our belief system, how we're governed, how our economies work, issues of injustice. And so ultimately the school, because of its very diverse background, we've got 8 different disciplines, from philosophy to criminology, economics to politics, geography to sociology, we've got a very disciplines which enables us to tackle these big fundamental questions, and also how those big fundamental questions impact on us as individuals, groups, and societies in a very complementary way. And hopefully that's why our growth has been so phenomenal.
And there are lots of issues here people are picking up on. We asked everyone at home what they thought, what their worries were about food sustainability. Matt, take a look at this very quickly, because it shows the diversity of aspects that are covered that I think responds very well, as you said before, to the areas of curriculum that we're looking at. Because there are things here to do with environment, but also, as you were talking about, inequality. So we're looking at affordability, the cost to the consumer. Then there are other things like soil degradation and aspects that, ultimately it's a power issue in terms of who controls what and what their output is to local people. People are picking up some really key things here.
Yeah, they are. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. We're about to have a showcase, exploring international relations, how the govern, how states relate to each other. We're looking at how societies are organised in DD 218. We're looking at global development issues of inequality between societies and in societies. So we're looking at many of the topics that the students have addressed today, and we are trying to think about these issues both from a disciplinary perspective, but also an interdisciplinary perspective. How do these, different disciplines collectively come together and address some of these global questions?
No, absolutely. Sandra says that she thinks that addressing the cultural differences is a major global challenge, because culture affects every aspect of life for people. And Eleanor says looking at big food and the harms that they've done as well. I know there's a particular interest in criminology, cases of environmental concerns and how big food has played a part in that. So there are lots of very interesting things, and I'm sure you'll enjoy our later discussions today about those. I wonder if we could just finish, Martin, with looking at the responsibilities here, because providing all of this material, etc., and looking at the sort of interactions in terms of those dynamics. I wonder if you can tell us about the responsibility of students as global and active citizens and communities of learners, and how they play a part in all of this also.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the exciting things that I find about SSGS as a school is the role it does play actually in helping students become, if you like, it sounds a bit cheesy in a way, but global citizens. I think it helps inform them about debates, arguments, that they can take those debates and arguments into the workplace, into the church, into the mosque, into the pub, you name it. And I think there's two aspects to this. I mean, one, I think we should really value our students themselves in the way they interact with each other. I mean, we're an incredibly diverse student body, probably the most diverse, I think, in the university, and students learn from each other, whether it's about race, identity, socioeconomic status, gender, and they learn from each other in forums, they learn from each other in tutorials, and actually they shape academics, because we ourselves have to respond to our student body, as well as all the discipline work that students follow in their modules. And I think there is a responsibility. I mean, students, like all of us, don't have to agree with everything they study and everything they learn. But hopefully, I think within SSGS, what students come out with is kind of they're more equipped to kind of engage in those debates, whether it's at a political level, a social level, or in fact an economic level. Yeah, so it's very important.
So we've opened today with an outline of some of the issues. There are many. Shonil, I wonder if you could sort of end today's session just with some thoughts, really, in terms of how the School of Social Sciences and Global Studies can help to tackle some of these big challenges that we've all talked about.
Yeah, absolutely, Karen. We talked about food security. There are a number of other challenges that are covered in the curriculum that we have in SSGS, whether it's environment and sustainability, or migration and mobilities, peace and conflict, rich-poor gap, transnational organized crime, or global ethics. Quite a wide range of challenges. And I think that challenge-led curriculum also helps us to make it a more current, vibrant, exciting. And collectively, the 8 disciplines, I believe, offer something that essentially is more than the sum of different parts. As a relatively new and growing and expanding school, we are keen to make sure that the research strengths of our academics are directly informing the new curriculum that we produce. And I think that's what students will discover with the SSGS curriculum, that it's very critically research-informed curriculum. It gives them an insight into what is current and up-to-date knowledge about a specific challenge. And I think as a school, we offer that new cutting-edge nature of curriculum that we offer.
Brilliant. Chanel, Matt and Martin, thank you so much for that. Well, stay tuned. We're going to watch a short video, which is about the BA Honours in Criminology, what is crime, because our next session is going to focus on social research, crime, justice and society. So stay tuned for a really exciting discussion in just a few minutes. See you then.